Last time on Spider-Man, he completely failed at stopping the villains. Can he stop them today? This is the Comicstorian channel, where I take some of your favorite trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read them dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Today we're going to be picking up where we left off with Spider-Man. His roommate Jamie has created a device known as the Clairvoyant, which allows you to kind of see the future. A group of supervillains have stolen it to use in their super secret supervillain casino, and now they're battling over who's going to get to use it. Meanwhile, Spider-Man, having lost the device, has been tracking it down with Ned Leeds. While this is going on, his supposed sister, Teresa Parker, has tracked down a villain who is going to tell her the truth of her origins. And that is today's issue, the Chameleon Conspiracy, picking up where we left off. If you want to watch all the previous videos yourself, the link is down below, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like button, leaving me a comment down below as to what you enjoyed about today's video, and consider joining our Patreon, where this channel is funded, patreon.com/Comicstorian. Alright, let's get into Amazing Spider-Man Chameleon Conspiracy. Night falls as Spider-Man and Ned swing across the skyline, Ned pointing up to a patch in the sky. There, trust me, he tells Spidey. The hero shoots a web sticking to the invisible surface of the palace, the invisible supervillain casino that floats over the city. Find the entrance and the doors begin to open up. Okay, hang on while I get things under control, Spider-Man begins to say, but the doors open to reveal pure pandemonium as villains are fighting villains, lanterns flying around, thrown pumpkin bombs, and everything pretty much is exploding. Before Spidey can do anything, Ned charges across the room. You worry about Jamie. I got something else I need to take care of. He shouts back to Spidey, but Spider-Man just stands there awkwardly for a moment, until finally he sees a lantern flying by with Jamie. Shooting a web, he leaps into the air, punching the lantern in the face. Mind if I cut in? He quips, and he shoots another web covering Chance's face, sending the mercenary crashing to the ground. As the lantern smashes into the ground, his pumpkin mask shatters, revealing a chameleon. And Chance looks at the villain in shock. Chameleon? He shouts, and he looks up to see the other lanterns removing their helmets, revealing that they are also the Chameleon. Bad news. We all are, one of them shouts. And there's another jack-o'-lantern overlooking the carnage. Wait, not all of us. Aw, man. This is gonna do a real number on my brand, the real jack-o'-lantern size. As more villains remove their masks, they reveal that they are also the Chameleon. And one shouts to them to grab Jamie as the scientist and Spider-Man are running across the room. But the Finisher steps up with another giant laser rifle and begins to open fire. Stay away, you scabs! The Clairvoyant belongs to the foreigner, he shouts. Turning back to Chance, he motions towards the two lantern chameleons that are escaping with the catalyst. Chance, if you're done licking your wounds, I could really use some assistance here, he shouts, and the merc nods, leaping into the air, chasing after the two chameleons. On it, he shouts, with the foreigner glancing over his shoulder at Slide, who is leaning back, drinking a martini. The job was to steal the catalyst. This will cost extra. Slide shrugs, and the foreigner looks back at him. Get the human asset away from Spider-Man and I'll double your fee, the foreigner shouts. In the strange hollow cell, halfway across the world has morphed once again, and the Finisher begins to narrate Dimitri's past. Teresa Parker, the woman that is seemingly Peter Parker's sister, sees the Finisher as a young boy, scared and alone at the orphanage. One day a stranger arrived, and it was that day that Dimitri met the Finisher. He introduced himself as Gustav Fiers, already amazed at the young boy's ability to disguise himself. The scene then shifts again, and Dimitri introduces the place where he learned everything. Teresa watches as the young boy moves amongst the many disguises and wigs that line the walls. Again, it shifts, and they're now standing in a classroom. Wait, I know this place, Teresa whispers, and Dimitri smiles. Ah, familiar, isn't it? Meanwhile, back at the palace, the foreigner is continuing to fire. I thought you vetted these jack-o'-lanterns, he shouts to the real jack-o'-lantern. Hey, I'm as surprised as you guys. But the foreigner shakes his head, firing into a group of lanterns. As they argue about who should be cleaning up the mess, Jack-o'-lantern jumps in, telling him he's got it. Outside, Chance continues to chase after the catalyst, blasting into one of the chameleons, knocking him out of the sky, causing the other to jerk on his flying disc. The weight of the catalyst begins to drag him down as the disc's propulsion system tries to compensate. Don't you drop that! Chance shouts at the chameleon. If you do, you're no more use to me. Or the chameleon, I suspect, Chance says, and he flies over, grabbing the other rope. He helps the chameleon hold on to the catalyst. But back inside, the foreigner is continuing to fight. He's unaware of the person that is lurking in the smoke behind him. Ned Leeds says hello and goodbye, Ned shouts as he lashes out, punching the foreigner in the jaw. The villain then hits the ground, looking back in surprise and anger. Spidey swings by, grabbing Jamie, bringing him to safety. But one of the larger chameleons that used to be the Grizzly sees him hiding. He comes over, lifting a slot machine that the young man is hiding behind. Well, what do we have here? I think the chameleon would like to have a word with you, he says, but suddenly Jamie is gone. Sorry, Smokey. The kid's the property of the foreigner, Slide shouts as he dashes across the room. Meanwhile, back with Teresa, looking around the classroom of the School of Covert Arts. Surprise crosses her face as she looks at the young students. No, these kids, I grew up with them. I recognize them, she says, and the finisher nods. Or perhaps you only think that you do. None of us are who we seem to be after all. These are children who trained to one day be whoever is needed. He tells her as the children's true nature as chameleons is revealed. Images of who the chameleons have taken over flash in front of Teresa, including an image of herself. No, that's impossible, she gasps, and the finisher shakes his head. That's where you are very much wrong, girl. There are many possibilities. More images flash of what could be. Perhaps she is really Teresa Parker, pulled from the wreckage of her parents' plane. Or perhaps the finisher found her at an orphanage and took her in, trained her for this role. Or perhaps she is the child of the two chameleons that replaced Richard and Mary Parker. He smiles at her. This is what your training taught you. Who you are, where you come from. These things are interchangeable, simply a matter of belief. And you are never to be believed, he tells her. She grabs the sides of her head as all of these images and thoughts go through her mind. No! You're lying to me! You're trying to manipulate me! Certainly another possibility, Finisher confirms. But Teresa knows who she is, knows that she saw a picture of herself as a baby with her mother. Dimitri nods. That picture you found by accident, and it was all the proof that you needed. But a chameleon disappears into their roles, programmed to believe the reality that is required of them. Who's to say that you didn't plant that picture yourself, only to discover it later? No! She screams, and when she opens up her eyes, she is still sitting in the cell, and the hologram of the finisher is still before her. I will help you, Agent. I will tell you who you really are, but you must bring me the clairvoyant. As he tries to convince her that this is who she is, that this is what she has to do, she reaches for her gun. Meanwhile, back at the palace, the chameleons continue to destroy the airship, finally ripping free the power source and throwing it out the window, cutting the power and bringing the ship down. The foreigner is fighting against Ned, trying to convince him that they need to stop this right now or they will both die. But Ned informs him that if he doesn't get to kill him, at least he'll let the crash do it. Meanwhile, Spider-Man is swinging outside, snapping a web onto Chance's face, throwing both the Merc and the Chameleon onto the deck of the palace. As the catalyst begins to fall again, he grabs it with a web and lifts it back up onto the ship. All right, time to save the day. Part 2. Inside, Slide is continuing to fight through the destruction of the palace to bring Jamie to the foreigner. Jamie begs and pleads to let him go, that they need to find a way off or they're going to die. And that's when Spider-Man appears with the catalyst webbed onto his back, handing Jamie the clairvoyant. We don't have much time. Do you think you can use this to find us a way out? Meanwhile, Ned has the foreigner pinned to the ground and continues to rain blows down upon him. You took everything from me! I had to live in hiding because of you! I had to let my own wife think that I was dead! He shouts as he punches again and again, the foreigner looking up in fear, blood already beginning to choke him. And that's when a web grabs Ned's hand. Ned, it's over! We have to move! Spider-Man shouts to his friend. Broken from his rage, Ned turns back to the foreigner and is shocked. Oh God, what have I done? At that moment, Jamie runs over, informing them that the ship is going to crash, that they are all going to die, and almost every possibility that the clairvoyant can present to them shows them crashing into Manhattan with thousands of casualties. There's a slim chance that they're going to be able to prevent it. Ned growls that Slim is better than none, and the trio begin to move as Spider-Man introduces everyone. By the way, Ned meet Jamie, Jamie meet Ned. Maybe we'll live long enough to get brunch sometime. As Ned and Jamie run off to do their own portions of the plan, Spider-Man makes it to the cockpit only to see it blocked by the real Jack-O-Lantern. As Spider-Man jumps over his head, kicking him, he simply tells him, sorry, I'm all out of quips right now. And then he grabs the stick in the cockpit and begins to haul back. Please don't crash, please don't crash, please don't crash! He repeats repeatedly, the palace managing to pull out of its dive, barely grazing the tops of buildings as Spidey manages to get it over the bay and crash it onto the other side. Moments pass and the trio begin to exit the palace. Thanks for flying Last Chance Airlines. We're sure you had other options when choosing airborne illegal gambling dens. We're glad you chose us. Please watch your step as you exit the aircraft. Spidey jokes. And outside, Jamie pulls away and sits on a fallen tree. He goes on explaining that he wanted this to be used for good, that he didn't mean for any of this to happen. And then he hands it to Spider-Man. He doesn't know what to do with it other than destroy it. The police eventually arrive and they arrest everyone, and Ned isn't happy that the foreigner and his crew got away, but is happy that he gets to go home to Betty. She smiles as he walks through the door. Later, Spider-Man sits on the rooftop while Teresa suddenly lands behind him with her glider wings. Hey Pete, sorry I'm late, but I had some business to attend to. No worries. You sure you're alright handling it? I just figured my super spy sister would have a better idea where we can hide this. Keep it safe. And with that, Spider-Man hands Teresa Parker the clairvoyant device. She nods and tells him that she loves him. You see, she had left Chameleon in his cell, her gun pointed at his head as she thought about forcing him to tell the truth, but tears welled in her eyes as she realized that she was afraid that he would, and she fell to her knees. The gun clattered hard on the floor, and she knew that whatever the truth was, it would break her. She convulsed. Her hand reached behind her head, and Dimitri smiled as her true nature was revealed. A chameleon. But that's not what happened. Teresa watched as Pete swung away. She doesn't need the finisher or Dimitri to tell her who she really is, because she is Teresa Parker. She looks down at the device in her hand, and in one motion, she slams it into the ground, destroying it. And back in the palace, the foreigner is furious as Chance tells him that all of their accounts have been drained. He slams his fist against the already destroyed desk. He realizes that his criminal empire has crumbled, so he finally accepts the deal from another villain who's been trying to court him this whole time. Kindred steps out of the shadows, demanding more serum from Dimitri. Easy, Osborn, we can make a deal. It's always a pleasure doing business. Again. And this brings us to the inevitable ending of Amazing Spider-Man, written by Nick Spencer. The conclusion is coming, and if you want to know how this ends, how Harry Osborn as Kindred, what's going on with Teresa, what's going on with this entire Spider-Man series, please consider subscribing, smashing that like button, and joining us here every Friday for another chapter of this Spider-Man story. Honestly, I'm really enjoying it. At first, this whole arc that Nick Spencer was trying to do is a bit weird, but it's kind of turned into almost a TV show. Spider-Man runs off and does all this crazy stuff, and then all the villains are manipulating him behind the scenes. And now we're eventually going to see what's going on with Kindred and the Sinister War and everything else that is going on here in Nick Spencer's Spider-Man run. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, because this has turned into one of my all-time favorite runs. Although, still doesn't beat the big time run way back in the day with Dan Slott, which we're going to begin covering here for you very soon, because I feel like a lot of you guys need to know where a lot of this started, where modern day Spider-Man started, where big time started, One More Day, all of this stuff. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for your continued support, and I will see you next time right here at Comicstorian.